I think the number one reason for cafes or restaurants not surviving is wrong expectations. The hidden costs, the excessive competition, the lack of assistance, the supply shortages.
Hey everybody, it is Dani Valent here with you for Dirty Linen. And in some ways, I feel like we are starting the year with this podcast. We've really enjoyed bringing you our summer series over the holiday period. But as that all winds up and we head into 2025 proper, the juicy bits, the meaty bits, I feel like it might be a good time to have the conversation that we're about to have today. I think there are so many questions for owners and workers in hospitality, and certainly for diners as well. What is the state of the dining landscape, especially for small business in Australia? Our guest today is extremely well placed to thrash all this out. David Facciolo is a small business owner in Melbourne. His cafe, Tru Coffee, is in Melbourne in the eastern suburbs. He's a passionate operator, but also a deep thinker about the industry. David, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Thank you, Dani. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so good to have you on the show. Give us a little bit of a sense of Tru for people who don't know it. What is it that you do?
Look, Tru Coffee, in essence, is a coffee and brunch location, much like many others around Melbourne. But I suppose what makes us really different is our ethos, certainly focused on ensuring that customer experience is one that is memorable. It may not always be for them. They may not always remember what they ate or the drink they ordered, but they will remember how we made them feel. And that's the ethos we try to inject in our place. We try and drill that into even our staffing, and we like to think that's our MO, if you like. So from where we started in our humble home of Footscray 3 years ago in a small shop. We spent 3 years there before finishing up just before Christmas. And it was only 18 months ago we actually upgraded to the Baldwin store. And we continued this pledge to really harness that customer experience, create that standard of which we're not just out there to make great coffee or poach the perfect eggs. We wanted to make sure that golden age of hospitality is still well and truly alive. So I like to think that's what Tru Coffee really embodies.
I love that. And it sounds like your approach hasn't sprung from nowhere. Can you tell us a little bit about your background in hospitality?
Certainly. So, look, it goes back over 20 years from my earliest memory of being at my mum and dad's pizza shop at Melbourne University in the 90s. I was assisting with the pizza making by standing on a milk crate, assisting with sauce or added toppings. And then I was promoted a couple of years later when I suppose I was able to add some centimetres to my height. I was able to take orders over the counter when it came to students at the time ordering pizzas. I was doing the quick arithmetic in my head because back then credit cards were unique to say the least. Cash was the currency back then. So, and basically from there, that's where the story started. And since then, it's been a myriad of experiences from working. I was at Brunetti's in Carlton when I was 14 and 9 months to the day itself. Through starting there, I can actually recall on the day I turned 14 and 9 months was my trial there, and I got the job that afternoon. So I couldn't have been more in a rush to get into hospitality when I could. My parents owned a cafe named the Fat Penguin at the time, which basically reflects a lot of what Tru Coffee is about. I led the barista team there. We were there for 7 to 8 years. And look, in between all of this, I somehow managed to nut out a business and property course at Deakin, which I loved, but all the time spent there evidently taught me that my calling was in hospitality. So fair to say I wouldn't be where I am without going to university and discovering that hospitality was where my real skill set was. But I'm forever grateful for that opportunity, and now I find myself with a raft of experience and lessons from reputable owners like the Botanical Hotel in South Yarra. I spent some time there. I worked at Square and Compass in East Melbourne and several other operators. So I'm certainly not a self-made person. I'm not a big believer in that. I believe that we're all a culmination of ethics, morals, lessons, experience, and I suppose it's one thing you won't learn in a university or on a piece of paper is experience. So I'm forever indebted to family and friends and mentors within the hospitality space for helping mould who I am today.
I love it, David, and I certainly hope you have a photo of yourself on the milk crate where it all began. So why do you think hospitality matters, and especially in the context of small business? Why is it important to have these small businesses looking after people around our cities and towns?
Well, hospitality in itself, now there's a term we can refer to. Hospitality is not always about, as I mentioned, the food and drink. Hospitality matters because it is about forging a relationship with someone. It's about creating an experience, creating a feeling, be it through the medium of food or drink. What we're really doing here, we're giving people a sense of home, a sense of pride. I know we, well, as Melburnians more commonly than others, we share this affinity with our local cafe, restaurant where we frequent, and bringing friends there is almost like showing off a new partner to the family. You know, you're really, that hospitality is really what's at the core of what we do. It is so important. It is one thing that I suppose separates you, because the idea is, be it a coffee or food, you can prepare many of the things which you have at cafes, you can prepare at home. But what you cannot prepare and serve is the way in which we make you feel. We want to make you feel valued. We want to ensure that at this point in time, you are the most important person in the world. And I think hospitality creates its own little space that for this minute point in time, you shut out whatever else is going on in your life. And for that, be it a couple of minutes visit in a takeaway coffee or the 45-minute brunch and brew stay, you are the most important person in the world. Well, that's certainly the way we like to do it at Tru Coffee.
You sort of make me think of like I can put a parenting lens on this, and that kids that feel loved and feel special and are seen, you hope that they're going to go out into the world and be good people, to do the same for others. I mean, do you see it as profoundly as that?
I think we do. If you're going to try and paint the picture of what it means to be a small business owner or a manager in hospitality, look, I'm no stranger to recognising that hospitality for many people is an in-between their studies and their career path. We're no strangers to that. The hospitality scene has been like that for some time. So what you're doing, or what we're doing, we're asking ourselves as managers is, how can we motivate and extract the very best out of people to continue to perform despite knowing that at the end of their journey they'll be pursuing something else? How do we try and basically get the best out of people despite knowing that their ultimate intention is not most likely to stay in hospitality but to go elsewhere? And that's where the personable skills of owners and managers come to play. It's important that we consider that how well we can manage people and how well a barista or wait staff member carries themselves out can more or less be a reflection of how we are and how we make them feel too.
Yeah. And David, I guess we've talked about the importance of hospitality generally, but why do you think small business is important?
Small business is important because when you small business, a lot of the time it can be the lifeblood, I think, of towns, of cities, of countries. When you consider going to a regional town, I've got family in Beechworth as an example. You walk down the main strip and what do you see? You see a collection of small businesses. You have the hairdresser, the cafe owner, the pub owner. And what you're seeing there is by frequenting that place, be it for a drink, a meal, a visit, the smallest contribution, that impact you make to them, it almost creates a circle economy. From what you may give to them, they may flow onto another small business. So I like to think that small businesses have a real place in Australia, in Melbourne in particular, because as far as hospitality goes for us, cafes are integral to giving people a sense of community. And for the amount of people I can say that I've met in a cafe, be it whether as an owner or also a customer, of which I'm not going to lie, I go to a different cafe every Monday, normally with my mum or dad, and we see what small business does for people. We see the importance and that sense of belonging that it helps create, be it a barber shop, a cafe, or other types of small business.
I love that. So we're talking cafes, we're talking small business. Now, one of the issues or topics that never fails to start a conversation is the cost of a cup of coffee. How much it is, how much it should be, what are the factors that impact that? Let's hear it from you, David. What does a cup of coffee really cost?
It's funny you asked, Dani. I was only going through this when I received my latest communication from a milk supplier in the last 6 weeks. I think just prior to Christmas, I received a sort of, I suppose, the present you wouldn't want to, and that was a price rise. That matched the additional price rise that came from our coffee company and also seemed to correlate with other price rises via electricity. So it caused me to do a bit of a recalculation over what the cost would be for a coffee around Christmas time. And look, for myself, if you are looking to sell your smallest coffee just from a point of view of $4.50, based on my costs, you'd be looking around $2.63. That's as a cost to the owner once you factor in your cup, your lid, your coffee, your milk, the wages, the electricity, the water, and the rent.
So how does that sit with you? Does that make you think that your cup of coffee should be closer to $6, or is that are you happy with that proportion?
Where it sits with me is once upon a time I was told when it came to food and beverage that the kind of markup you'd be wanting to go for would be 400% on the cost. So it's funny reading, I think it was Karen Wilson, Owen Jarks, and Peter, Quattrocelli, who wrote in the ABC not long ago, the idea about a $10 flat white. Now, I'm not about to create a headline by agreeing or disagreeing with that, but I think where the cost of a cup of coffee sits with me is that it's a reflection on where we're all at. I mean, we have to, as an owner, I'm a passionate owner. I'm very much drawn on the relationships we build with people. We can't turn around and say that we're purely transactional. We understand that at the moment, everyone's doing it tough. There are challenges for everyone. Electricity doesn't necessarily discriminate. It affects all of us. There are a lot of these prices that affect us all. So as a business owner, part of what we've got to try and find is a balance between what's going to be a price level that we find is sustainable for us, a price which we can allow our customers to pay, be it on a daily basis, and find a happy medium there for where we sit at the moment, there's no exact science for, or no exact number which I think will be happy. But the reality is, we may well be reconsidering what the average price of a coffee will be simply because of these factors. But I suppose, Danny, that's also a reflection that there are costs beyond the cup, the lid, the coffee and the milk that go into coffee, which may not be as well known to people outside the industry.
Well, I mean, what are some of those hidden costs? We've got a lot of hospitality people that listen to this podcast, but we have a lot of diners and punters who would love to understand that a bit more.
Yeah, definitely. So just as an example, we're talking when it comes down to our water as an example, you're talking about there's a trade waste, that's additional things that go on. I knew, for instance, when we speak to other business owners, there are things like grease trap, for example. So that's an additional cost that comes in. We have filters in our kitchen which are required to be changed over on a regular basis. There are permits and dining permits and outdoor dining permits which come into play. When it comes down to the be it not just the fridges or the machinery, there's costs of upkeeping that. You might turn around and say on a hot day that everything's going well, then before you know it, your fridge breaks down, and in trying to fix that, might be anywhere between $1,000 or $2,000 to have it repaired in time for the next day. So there are a couple of the unexpected costs, but I suppose the everyday costs that go into it are making sure that whether it's not just the core, but there are the electricity, water, gas charges as well. There's also the training that goes into being a barista or a chef, making sure that they receive the adequate, consistent training rather than having a staff member basically just coming to be the barista full time. We want to look towards investing in them consistently, be it through additional training. Now, that of course comes at a price to a owner, and that's the same with, I suppose, chefs as well. If you want to help build on that experience that they have and keep them motivated, you've got to look at ways of improving that. So these are all additional costs I find that go into running a place which you may not expect if you're considering opening a cafe for the first time.
And would you say, you mentioned right at the start how important it is to you to create that experience. Obviously, that means that your staff have to be on board with the values of the business and you need to be able to transmit them. I mean, do you feel like there is a cost that you can put your finger on when it comes to creating a better experience for customers?
Yes, the cost of creating a better experience, we have to say, and I make this very clear as well, Danny, to any staff that come on board, that I would be the harshest judge. I would like to say the person I'm the most harshest on is myself. I've always maintained that ethos that if I wouldn't send it myself, or you wouldn't serve it to your to your parents, your grandma, then you shouldn't serve it to anyone. Because, I suppose the cost of doing good business is a myriad of things. You're putting in the time, the effort, the care factor. For me and for my staff, it's about ensuring that we deliver the best we can. And if we were to consider sending out an egg that might have been poached for too long, a coffee which may have been sitting in the past for a minute longer than it should be, so it's dropped in temperature. If we want to send anything that's not at 100% our best, then we can't be asking customers to pay 100% of the price. We have a responsibility in hospitality, and certainly here at Tru Coffee, that whatever we put into any type of food or beverage, we give it our all. And as a result, we provide the best experience we can and control what we can control to ensure that customers have that memorable experience.
I mean, there's so much that goes into it. Hospitality businesses are so complex. You've outlined some of those costs that remain hidden for the average punter. How challenging is it for you, David, to be running a cafe in 2025?
Well, if you're looking at cafes and restaurants in 2025 as a money-making stream with minimal effort and maximum returns, Look, again, like any great coffee or plate of food, there's a labour of love, a sprinkle of passion, a dressing of stress, and a narrative on what creates the finished product. When we're looking at 2025, we're faced with a bit of the unknown, where a price is going to go on our end. We don't necessarily know whether there's going to be a drought. We don't know if there's going to be climatic conditions in Central America where we source out many of our beans. There is a great degree of unknown from a supply point of view. And now, of course, there's also the competition too. We know that there's cafes closing and restaurants opening. Restaurants and cafes closing, and there are some that are opening too. So the competition is around the corner. Now, we also know that there are people making coffee at home, which, look, we're passionate about our coffee, so we do like the fact that people are having coffee at home. But there are, like anything, we have to create an experience which people value higher than having their own coffee at home. So that is, in some way, a challenge.
There's so many challenges. I mean, how do you feel about it? Is it stressful? Are you struggling? Are you still just as passionate? Like, what's your mindset here?
I think the mindset has to be, you have to go back to the core and think to yourself that when times are tough, where are those challenges and supply shortages, remind yourself why we are in this industry. Every day for myself, being a 7-day business, every day I walk into work full of optimism and enthusiasm. And of course, I'm carrying a lot of stress. We're spinning plates here as small business owners. Is it challenging? Absolutely it is. But at the same time, challenges and that adversity basically makes me a better person, and it's what's going to help, I suppose, separate some owners from others in how they encounter these challenges. You can choose to encounter it, I suppose, with a level of on one hand, we can approach some of these challenges with a bit of a fear, but on the other hand, we can see it as an opportunity to grow. So you look at it from anticipation or apprehension. How do you want to see these challenges that come on, these price rises? How can it challenge us to think in a different way and enable ourselves to get better despite the challenges that face us?
Oh, I love your spirit. So I want to ask you about the changes that you'd love to see, and maybe let's break it into two different areas. What would you love? So the first one is, what would you love to see from customers, from diners? I suppose the consumer landscape, and then what would you like to see in the operating landscape? Whether that's changes in legislation or government support, taxation changes. So let's start with customers. What would you like to see from them?
Well, Dani, from customers' point of view, they're the lifeblood of our business. We would like to say, very simply to customers, the next time you buy your cup of coffee from wherever you go, think about what or who are you supporting. We're no strangers to knowing that there are the benefits and the importance to people's everyday coffee, which is why you see these coffee machines in Coles and Woolworths and your 7-Elevens. But when you break it all down, those $2 cups of coffee which you do have, whilst we are happy that you are getting your caffeine fix, we ask you to consider that if you're going into a cafe, that money you're paying or giving to the cafe or restaurant, that is going towards supporting the very person who's making your coffee, the people who are producing that milk, the people who are picking the berries off that coffee, the people who are packing those cups, and more or less everything else you see that goes into that business. Now, that's what we would ask customers, is to consider that despite the ease and availability and seemingly stressless transaction of going to a supermarket and fast food and service station venue that sells coffee at a bottom grade price, we ask you to consider the reason why the price is that low. Would they really be making money out of that? I would not say so. I believe it's more of a tactic to have you in there, whereas for us, our price that's set is a reflection on us ensuring that everyone, including the customer, gets a fair share of value from that purchase.
Okay, David, so that's what you want to see from customers. What about the regulatory or the compliance landscape? Is there anything you think government could do? What would you like to see there?
I think there can be that push from government in when it comes to the government controls, be it even from local government per se. As I made mention before, there are additional costs that go into the everyday running of a cafe and restaurant, and that is by way of council permits, food and beverage, trading permits, outdoor dining permits. For many other places out there, there are licensed permits. For us, or for myself as a business owner, like many other owners out there, there have always been some challenges with council in trying to obtain the right permits. Number one, I think from a pricing point of view, there has to be more of an understanding as to what is reasonable for a cafe owner. With the slim margins we already encounter, the additional costs and the rises of these permit prices do provide for a challenge, because if, say, you are a licensed venue and for any such reason you're unable to meet the financial obligations of paying for a permit next year or for the year coming, there should be more or less options of communication from councils as towards what sort of payment arrangements can take place. How can we meet councils halfway to ensure that us as business owners are able to grow and survive, and whilst at the same time feel supported by government? On the other hand as well, there is talk out there. I mean, being an election year, we're always going to hear the idea of some policies floated around, and I think having an incentive out there for people to even take their clients or small or customers, whoever it may be, out to venues, and there is mention of a tax offset or a tax refund for anything up to $20,000 for people who take their co-workers or, as I said, clients out to places. That's a nice way of incentivising businesses to go out to their local coffee shop or restaurant and basically support them, because the money that goes into those places, if there's more of an incentive for individuals or customers to go to a cafe or restaurant, we have to support that, because for us, we're surrounded by businesses ourselves, and we find that if they're happy to come out for a lunch or a coffee on a regular basis, that end of the day does impact us positively.
So, David, what about people who are perhaps less experienced in business than you are? Maybe someone that wants to be one of those people that are opening their first business in 2025. What sort of advice would you give them about the setup? What do they need to be really careful of, and what do they need to stay on top of in those early months?
Well, Dani, we spoke about why places, cafes and restaurants, why many may be closing in the past year. And I think the number one reason for cafes or restaurants not surviving is wrong expectations. The hidden costs, the excessive competition, the lack of assistance, the supply shortages. These are the sort of things which need to be considered but aren't advertised. For the average punter who can walk into a cafe and restaurant and see that there's people on seats, it's easy to turn and say that, well, this business is doing well. But if you are looking at the idea of opening a restaurant or a cafe, my best advice would be to sit down, have a chat even to a staff member, and even ask, is the manager or owner around, and pick their ear. Have a listen to them. Factor in sometimes the worst case scenario, because whilst I myself as an operator and many others out there are optimistic and set on creating something magical, we do so knowingly that there are going to be challenges every single day. Now, what the challenges look like, I can't describe to you. The only advice I could say would be to expect the unexpected, but be humble enough, and this is something I tell myself regularly, be humble enough to ask someone in the industry or a peer, listen, what else can I expect? Because no one knows enough to be an ultimate critic. No one is perfect, and we all know in this industry that there are surprises. So by even asking someone within the industry, be them 1, 2, 5 years experienced, what can I expect? You may gain the insight which may be worth their 5 years, and the value of the information you receive could be, well, invaluable.
I love that. I love the generosity in what you're suggesting there. That's really heartwarming. David, so great to get your insights I think I've got a bit of a feeling that I've been to Tru Coffee and been very well looked after and cared for. So thank you so much for that. I love your idea of going into this challenging year with anticipation rather than apprehension. And really wish you all the best in bringing your aspirations to fruition and looking after your community, as I know you love to.
Thank you, Dani. Look, I'm a big fan of all the work you do in providing terrific insights for consumers out there and providing enormous support for businesses out there. So I suppose on behalf of the small business community, we can't thank you enough. And to, those who are listening, I suppose if there's anything I can try and, if there's anything you can really take out of this from me, first and foremost would be that, for us moving forward, we had this insatiable desire to do better, to create an experience. And if you're ever thinking of quitting, shutting the doors, do your best to remind yourself of why you're in the business. Because for someone like myself who's faced challenges and faced the closure of a cafe or a restaurant already, it was going back to that core ethos that really gave me the answer as to whether I should or shouldn't be in a business. And for where I'm at Tru Coffee at the moment, this is only the start of a journey which I know and I'm confident of will last a long time.
I love it. Thanks so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you, Dani. Thank you very much.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinenat.deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This